Houseplanters, it's Marina. Today I'm talking about all things propagating and just gonna share my tips and tricks and what's worked for me, and maybe you can learn something along the way. Also be propagating a couple things. You could just see how I do it if you do it differently. And I would love to know your favorite way of propagating in the comments down below. And so let's get started. So first I want to talk about water propagating, which is actually my favorite way to propagate. And I honestly just feel like it's the fastest. Literally all you're gonna do is take some shears or even some scissors if you want. And if you have a vining plant like this, let's get a little closer. If you have a vining plant like this is my Cebu Blue. You're gonna wanna find some nodes, so you can see some node action going on here. Here's a little aerial root. I'm just gonna cut this whole long vine here, like so. So I'm left with this. And the best part is that this aerial root here already kind of forming, so that'll make propagating a lot easier because the roots are going to come from that aerial root. And I'm just going to cut off the rest of that stem right before the aerial root, and then we just take this part and literally just like stick it in water. Make sure the node is completely submerged in water, and you just wait until it grows roots. It usually takes probably like close to 6 weeks, if not maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. Each plant is different, and you're going to want to change the water out every few days because plants need oxygen in order to propagate and grow their roots correctly, and refreshing the water is going to help promote that oxygen, keep the oxygen flowing, and it's also going to help keep bacteria at bay, so you're less likely to grow algae in the water, which is like that green murky stuff. It grows on the glass sometimes. And as far as water goes, or just propagating in general, there's some things that people use. So we have rooting hormone, and I just started experimenting with this really, so I don't have much to say, but it claims to help with rooting plants faster, mainly when it comes to soil. So basically what you do is after you cut the plant, you just dip it in it. It's literally just like a white powder, kind of looks like baby powder. You literally just dip it in there, and it's supposed to help stimulate the growth, and you place it in soil. It also helps with transferring your plants from water into soil, or if you're like repotting, or if you have a new plant, it helps with that transplant. At least that's what it claims. I'm still experimenting to see if it actually does help, so I will keep you all updated. So that is that rooting hormone. And this is by Begonias. I will have this link down below if you want to try it out. It's pretty cheap. Next we have Super Thrive, which I'm sure you all have heard a lot of people talk about it and swear by it. Super Thrive is a vitamin solution, and it has kelp in it. It smells kind of funny. A lot of people use this mainly to help their plants recover if they get them from shipping. And then I know some people use it in propagating as well. They'll put it in, they'll mix it in with their water. Some people use it in semi-hydroponics. I'm still experimenting with this too. I've used it for about a month now, and it's okay. I haven't really noticed a significant difference, especially when it comes to propagating, but I don't think a month is really enough time to give me like a solid opinion on it, so I'm still like testing it out. I have Newt, which is what I swear by really. I've used Newt since January, I think, so it's been around 3 months, and I've noticed a significant difference when it comes to propagating things. I feel like things propagate so much faster, significantly faster when I have it with Newt. And basically Newt is kind of like a vitamin solution like Super Thrive, but it's more of like a liquid fertilizer. It has like a lot of poop, animal castings mixed in it, so I think that's what really helps, and it has a lot of beneficial bacteria. Newt is amazing though. I haven't done my update video on it yet, but I really do highly recommend it. If you all want to give it a try, I do have a referral code I could DM you. But yeah, highly recommend it. But at the end of the day, you really don't need any of this stuff. You can just use plain old water and plain old soil. Depending on the plant that you have, your success rate would still be fairly good. There are some particular plants that will probably need some extra stuff. But that's like when you're getting into like the more uncommon and more finicky plants. But if you have like a pothos, these things are so easy to propagate. You'll do fine with just like regular old water. Another thing that I love about propagating is not only do you create another plant, but when you do cut the plant, like how I just cut the Cebu Blue, you will stimulate more growth both from the soil, like coming from the soil, and also from the stem of where I cut it. A lot of times this stem will branch off and pretty much create a second one, and it'll make the stem itself bushier, and it'll make the plants fuller. And a lot of plants do this when you propagate them, when you cut them back, so it's awesome. It's a quick way to make a fuller, bushier plant. I definitely recommend experimenting with that. I've been experimenting with it for a while now, and it's so fun to see the results. It's really cool, really addicting, and it's part of the reason why I'm always chopping up my plants. So we have the Cebu Blue in water. Honestly, you could put multiple cuttings in a cup of water like this. Okay, so next I am going to propagate my Begonia maculatum. This plant, this stem here specifically, is just super leggy, and as you can see, it has like a damaged leaf. This is the leaf from Home Depot, and I just want to cut it back, and I know that when I cut it, it's going to create another branch off of the stem, and I know it's going to produce more buds, and then I'll be able to take that stem once it's rooted and put it back in the soil and have a nice fuller begonia. So that's what we're gonna do. I love propagating begonia and peperomia specifically because they don't need a node like a pothos, or like maybe like a Rhaphidophora tetrasperma, or like a monstera. They don't need a node to propagate. They literally just propagate from the stem, and it's amazing. I'm going to take this and, oh, can I fit my scissor in there? I'm gonna cut it right here. So you can see there it is. And I've been experimenting with begonia propagations, and the first successful one, as you can see the roots there, and this literally just came off the bottom of the stem, and it's shooting more roots out from the node area. So that's really cool. This is a Begonia Coral C, and it's fascinating, honestly. It's so cool. So in this jar I have some water with newt in it. I'm just gonna stick this right in there and just let it chill on my plant shelf next to the window. It does get pretty bright indirect light there, and by that I mean it's as close to the window as it can be, but it's also like in a shaded area, so it's not getting actual like sun rays on it, so it's not getting like direct light that'll burn the foliage, especially on begonias, but it's still getting a lot of that ambient light. And I change the water maybe like every 4 days to once a week. There's some people that don't really change the water at all, but I usually change the water because I do want to keep that oxygen flow in there and just have a better success rate of my things rooting. So next I want to talk about sphagnum moss. This is actually the real reason why I wanted to make this video, because sphagnum is kind of a learning curve. You hear a lot of people, especially on Instagram, talk about it, talk about moss or like a mospital, or they use moss to rehab plants. I really don't recommend having an expensive or very valuable plant be your first moss experience, because I know a lot of people that have rotted stuff in moss. I know I've rotted things in moss. My first one was a Monstera siltepecana that I rotted in moss, and I'm still really salty about it. Take this out. Oh, look at that. This has been in moss for about a month now, and it has 3 roots coming out. See there, which is awesome because you all know I was really nervous about propagating this elbow monstera. I'm proud to say they're both rooting really well. So this is moss here. It's you could get it off of Amazon. The type of moss that is really good for propagating and a lot of people use, I've seen only available on Amazon. It's a New Zealand brand, Spaghnum moss. I will have it linked down below if you guys want to use it and try it out. Basically, what I like to do is mix some perlite in with the moss, because moss can get really compact, especially when you water it, and compact wet things tend to tend to rot things and stems and roots. So you want to keep it nice and fluffy when you water it. I would suggest maybe kind of fluffing it up a little bit just to keep air in there and to keep it from getting compact. The perlite really does seem to help with that, and it just keeps airflow going in there, and it keeps things just not from rotting. Another reason why people like to use moss is because it is really good at retaining moisture, and that's kind of a good thing and a bad thing. For me, it's a bad thing because it stays wet for a long period of time, I've noticed, which is why I have it in terracotta. Terracotta draws away the moisture, so it helps dry it out a lot faster. And I also have a heat mat right here, and it keeps things warm, and it also helps dry out the sphagnum moss, so I'm actually able to water it. Before I had the heat mat, I was just misting the moss enough so that it was damp. Basically what you want to do, keep it wet, but when you wring it out, you don't want any water to leak through. That's pretty much the perfect moisture level you want to have your moss at. But if you're like me and your moss tends to stay more on the wet side for a long period of time, I highly recommend getting a heat mat because it helps dry it out. Moss, it's not my favorite way to propagate, but it is easier to also pull plants out, and you're able to check on the roots a lot easier than if you were propagating in soil. And yeah, I mean, that's really all I have to say about moss. Definitely not the fastest in my opinion. I did use rooting hormone in this, and I've been watering it with Newt, and this is how much roots I do have. And now we compare it to my water propagation, and this has been in water for the same amount of time this has been in moss, and I've been using water with Newt in it, and you can see the root system is very established and a lot bigger, a lot thicker. And I just think that's because plants like to get a lot of water when they're propagating, and so it's able to draw in as much water as it needs. Versus in the moss I do tend to keep on the drier side so that I don't rot it out. But also this one had a big aerial root and this one has a small aerial root, so that could be another reason why. But this was just a really fascinating observation. This plant also does have a big section of white. It does have less chlorophyll, so it's not able to take in as much as this one because this one has a lot more green. Some observations that I've made. Pretty much everything I have to say about moss. Like I said, it's really not my favorite. I do prefer it over soil propagation. So here we have a Monstera adansonii, as you can see, very juvenile, doesn't really have many holes in it. I got these from cuttings last summer, and I mainly have had them in soil the whole time. I propagated them in soil, and I've propagated a lot of other things in soil as well. The only downside to soil is, from what I've noticed, It does take a little bit longer because if you're like me, you probably want to keep your soil more on the dry side so it doesn't rot. And it's just all about finding that medium of plants getting too much water and plants getting not enough water. Also, the thing that sucks about it is that it's a lot harder to dig it out, to check the roots, and when you're digging it out, you're digging around the soil and you're kind of compromising everything that has like adjusted to the plant being in there. You really just have to test your patience and just leave it in there and then check on it in about 5 to 6 weeks. And if you can pull on it without it coming out, then the plant has rooted, it has roots, it's establishing itself. The good thing about soil propagation though is that you don't have to pull it out of water or moss and make room in a pot and like make room for it in a pot that already has like cuttings and stuff. You could just leave it in there and it's already established and it's good to go, and you don't have to worry about the transfer from water or moss to soil. So the transplanting period is way smoother because there is no transplanting period, and that's what I like the most about soil. But I rarely do it because I like to see my roots. I like to make sure that they're not rotting. I like to make sure that my plant is growing them. So that's why I usually tend to pick water propagations. And I'm actually going to cut this because this vine here is just so skinny and not what I want a vining plant to be. So once again, I am just going to cut between the nodes. You can see they're kind of sticking out there. Ah! Oh gosh, okay. There we go. We have that. And I have a bunch of Addisonite cuttings propagating right now on my windowsill, so I'm just going to plop that in there. No, not even. Actually, for the sake of this video, you guys wanted to see how this works. As you can see, it's literally like a fine powder. I don't recommend just dipping it right into there in case your plant has a bacteria or something. You know, you're not spreading it. I just put it in a cap, not the best, but it is what it is. And just swirl it around so that it's nice and coated. As you can see, all that white powder. And then you just make a little hole in there for the soil, stick it in. I like to push it in a little bit. And you cover it back up. And there you have it. Then you just play the waiting game. That's it. And in probably about a month, I will pull on it a little bit and see if it started rooting. I mean, I might do that tomorrow too because I'm highly impatient. So that is it. That is all the ways that I've tried propagating stuff. I would like to try doing some LECA because I know LECA has a very high success rate when it comes to propagating. So maybe you will see a video on that in the future. I hope you all enjoyed this. I've showed you all my ways of propagating, and I mean, like always, like I say in all my videos, take my advice with a grain of salt. I am not an expert, I am not a botanist, I am just a hobbyist who have done a lot of experimenting, a lot of errors, and a lot of failures. And hopefully this was able to help you successfully propagate something. If I forgot something or if you have any tidbits to share, definitely share them in the comments below and everybody can read it and see your tips and tricks and what's helped. Everything I mentioned will be linked down below and available through Amazon. And please let me know your favorite way of propagating because I would love to hear about it. I hope you all will give this video a thumbs up. I hope it was helpful in some way, and please subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!